Sure.
Well, good morning, everyone. Whether you're here in person or joining us online, welcome to the forum at St. Bart's in Midtown Manhattan. My name is Peter Thompson. I serve as the vicar here, and it is my joy and delight to welcome you to this weekly series where each week we have sacred conversations about the things that matter. And today, as we honor and celebrate Labor Day weekend, we're having a conversation about workers in our society. And we're really honored to have with us Yomira Frankie Resto. She is a labor organizer with a Local 338, which is a branch of the National Union of Retail, Wholesale, Department Store Union, as well as the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. She and others with Local 338 have worked together with Local 1 and Local 888 to form Trabajadores Agrícolas Unidos, which organizes, that's United Agricultural Workers, right?
Correct.
Or Workers Agricultural United, organizing agricultural workers on Long Island. You may have heard, if you remember our forum on Labor Day a year ago, we heard some about these efforts from the Reverend Richard Witt, who runs the Rural Migrant Ministry, which I know you've partnered with.
Absolutely.
So I know there have been important developments over the last year in this effort.
Yes.
And we are looking forward to hearing about them from you this morning.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, especially with you, Reverend. Thank you for having me. And it's a great pleasure to speak about the farm workers and everything that we've done within the last 2 years. Since July 17th of 2019, legislation signed the Farm Workers Bill, which was established the it's a tongue twister. It's Farm Labor's Fair Labor Practice Act to protect workers' rights. The bill grants the farm workers the right to overtime pay, a day of rest each week, most importantly, the right to organize and form a union at their workplace. Before New York State passage of historic Fair Labor Practices Act, agricultural workers were deprived of fundamental rights and many workplace protections that we take for granted, including the right to organize and join a union. Essential workplace protections such as work safety standards, such as salaries and contractual employment obligations that were not guaranteed to many of these hardworking human beings. In the fall of 2019, a coalition was formed amongst Local 338, like you stated, RWDSU, UFCW, and UFC Local 888, and Local 1, which partnered with statewide Rural Migrant Ministry. Our goal has been to educate agricultural workers about the new law and their right to unionize. Unfortunately, nothing came easy. As we all know, during the beginning of a pandemic, it wasn't easy at all. Workers were very scared to speak to anyone due to their immigration status. It made it hard to do outreach and build relationships. At the same time, we also started to face the beginning of the pandemic that shook our world and our organizing outreach efforts. In order to gain access to these workers, Local 338 joined with Rural Migrant Ministries at their weekly English classes at the North Fork of Long Island. We made many trips to hand out free face masks and sanitizers to the workers in the vineyards. We made sure that the workers had the proper protection while they worked. Eventually, we were able to build trust and strong bonds, and little by little, more farm workers started to attend English classes. This is when we met most of the workers from different vineyards, such as Pindar, Osprey, Bedell, Palmer, Palmanok, and many more. In the last 2 years, we've partnered with Rural Migrant Ministries to conduct workshops to educate workers about their rights to organize, their overtime protection, housing rights, and how to secure a tax ID, and more. The coalition is called Trabajadores Agrícolas Unidos, New York Chapter, RWDSU, UFCW. In English, Agricultural Workers United, New York, RWDSU, UFCW. In March of 2021, Local 338, UFCW, RWDSU gained a majority of the support from Pindar Vineyards located in Peconic, allowing us to file a petition to the Public Employees Relations Board, aka PERB, requesting a certification to represent all 12 field workers. On September 27, 2021, New York Public Employees Relations Board officially certified Local 338, RWDSU, UFCW as a union to represent Pindar Vineyards, the very first in New York and many in Riverhead, New York. Local 338 is extremely proud to have made history alongside the workers of Pindar. We are now negotiating their very first contract and looking forward to the workers getting the dignity and respect they all deserve. We also, on April 2022, once again gained majority support from the Palmer and Palmanock Vineyards, allowing us to request a multi-employer petition requesting certification for 12 more field workers. I can proudly say that on August 9, 2022, Local 338 was officially certified by PERB as the union to represent these two vineyards on the North Fork. This is also the beginning of a mission to guide many more workers to join the fight, a movement that is dedicated to fight for their right to organize and learn that they deserve to be treated fairly and to receive better living conditions and even clean drinking water that they deserve. So many of these rights have not been protected, and Local 338 will continue the fight and is dedicated to educating agricultural workers so they can continue to stand up and fight for their rights.
Thank you so much for updating us, Yamira. I'm wondering if you can tell us why this fight is so important. I was surprised to learn that prior to the passage of this act in 2019, farm workers didn't have the same rights that most workers do. Why is that the case, and why is it so important, not only what happened in 2019, but the work you're doing right now?
So like you stated, prior to 2019, farm workers did not have any type of rights. Every other industry in the United States did. So it's been a fight that's been going on for a very long time, and finally, thank God to legislation and to our leadership that we fought hard to be able to represent these workers and to teach them how to have a voice in their workplace. So the fight is very important because these workers have not had a voice in so many years. They've been oppressed by these farmers, and their conditions within the farm is not even habitable. It's not even human. I mean, they don't get clean water. They don't have access to bathrooms. So if they have to use the restroom, I mean, keep it to your imagination, but guess where they're using the restroom? They're not treated properly. They're given the lowest of the minimum wage, and they're the backbones of a company. So you being the backbone of this company, you're making them profits, and you're getting minimum wage and working long hours and putting wear and tear on your body. So this fight is very important because we need to protect our workers. We need to protect these folks that feel like because they're undocumented, they don't have the rights to be treated like human beings like you and I. So it's a very important fight for all of us.
And I read that the roots of kind of farm workers being treated differently had to do with the South in the Reconstruction era, and kind of racism, essentially, because most of the workers were non-white, and the thinking was they didn't deserve the same protections as white workers.
Absolutely. No, it's the truth. They're looked at like the bottom of the barrel. They don't deserve to be treated or given anything that any other human being should be given. I mean, we've worked with women that don't have access to bathrooms, non-sanitary conditions, and if they do have a bathroom, they're using the same bathroom as men. And most of those bathrooms, not to say, men are a certain way, but, everything is different for them. They have different needs than the men there, and they're not given the same access as us women in different bathrooms, clean, sanitary conditions. So they're treated like they're not human at all,
So the systemic racism oppression continues to this day.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about who these people are? You've told us a little bit about their experience. What are some stories as you've done this work that have particularly resonated with you?
There's so many stories. It's sad. They're taken advantage in many ways, and housing is one of them. Some of them live on farms, and they pay more than you and I in rent. So if we're complaining about $2,000 worth of rent, they're getting charged more, which is not fair, and that's because of their immigration status. They look at them like, you know what, you want to be here, you need a job, you're going to pay more. We've seen workers that work on the fields after chemicals have been sprayed. And as we all know, these chemicals are not safe for them. It's not safe for them to breathe. They're not giving protection, face masks, gloves. They cut themselves. They use different types of utensils there, or tools per se. Tools such as shears or scissors to cut the vines. They cut themselves. All different types of conditions. Their homes, in which the ones that do live in the farms, they don't have proper heat for the winter time. They don't have good functioning water. They share rooms. So let's say it's a room for one person or two. They split it into 4 beds in one room. So they have to share so that they could split the rent and afford living while supporting their families in their countries, which a lot of them come from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador. And they're not only working here, they're working for their families, 1, 2, 3, 4 kids out in their own countries. So it's a lot of stories that you hear, walking around and speaking to them, and you just see it in their face that they're just down and depressed, and it's not, the morale is completely low in these workplaces.
So you've organized at 3 vineyards now so far. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's kind of next? What are you working on?
So we just recently had our contract proposal meeting with the folks from Palmanot. They gave us their proposals for what they want to see on their contract, such as vacation time, medical benefits. As you know, paying medical bills are not cheap at all. So if they get sick, it's $150 out of their pocket. If they have to go to a specialist, it's $200 or more to see a doctor. That's coming out of their own personal pockets. So, that's part of what their proposals are. They want to have vacation time off. These folks work all year long. They work, while a lot of our folks were working remotely, these farmers remained on the farms during the hottest conditions, rainy conditions, snowing, every type of condition you could think about. These folks were working out on the fields. So they want a little bit more protection. They want gear, they want gloves, they want winter stuff, they want hats for the summertime to protect their skin. So we could also negotiate that in the contract. And most importantly, respect and dignity. These are all integral parts of a contract, but for them, it's the respect. They're fighting for respect and a voice at their workplace. As you know, the company has their rules, but a contract, it's a binding handbook that protects them, not the company. So they want to be able to feel that protection and have that voice in that contract, so that when they read it, or there's something that happens at the fields or with their employer, that they have that contract that protects them. So they're just mainly fighting for respect and dignity in the workplace.
When you first arrive at a farm and talk to workers, how does that process happen? I'm sure some are really glad to be working with you, but I'm sure some others are hesitant about what possible unionization could look like. Can you talk about what those first steps are like?
So in the beginning, it was very tough. They don't trust anyone. It's very hard to form conversation with them due to their status. They don't know if you're actually here to help them or not. So we really began with handing out face masks. We assisted RMM. We had a nice partnership with them, and we bought them masks and hand sanitizers, and we continue to do so. And after some time, we were able to assist RMM with handing out other knowledge, literature to help them protect themselves at their workplace, know that there is a community that's standing behind them and beside them, more beside them than behind them. We assisted them with English classes twice a week, Spanish classes twice a week. So they started to trust us. The more they saw us, the more that they saw the sincerity in what we were doing. And we took advantage of that, and we also started having monthly educational classes as to, just workshops of workers' rights, and explain to them that this is a right that they never have had in the past, and now they have. And little by little, it brought us a little bit of a relationship, and now it's like, they're like our best friend now. We could speak to them, we could call them, and we were able to form this beautiful bond, and it's just continues to grow. They spread the word around. They all know each other. At first it's like, oh, I don't know anyone from anywhere else. And now it's beautiful because they're like, oh yeah, well, I know such and such here, I know such and such there, and they bring their people because now they're feeling the warmth of just someone that's there to help them.
Are there hesitations about unions among workers?
I feel like the fear that they have is not against the union. It's more like repercussions from their employer, firing them for supporting a union. Besides that, they have had unions in their countries, so they know what unions are. It's just that they don't know how they function out here in the United States. So
Sure.
it's something new. So for them, it's just fear that their farmer would fire them for speaking to someone at the union. So that's where education and our monthly courses, they assist them in learning that they don't have to fear their employer. This is their right to do so, and they're part of the rest of the industry in the United States. They're able to do what they have to do and organize. So it's worked out, and it's working out.
What about employers? What are your relationships like with them? How do they oppose your work? And why have they not put some of these protections in place already? What are their motivations?
Oh, they don't care to put this into place. I mean, it doesn't benefit them at all. They're looking at it like, why should they have a voice? This is not their farm. This is our farm. Very selfish motives on their end. They don't think about these folks that, like I said, they have wear and tear. They're working 20-something hours during harvest season. They don't think about their mental state of mind working all these hours and not being able to be close to their friends and their family and their country. So the farmers don't want us, obviously. They have a negative reaction to when they see us. I mean, I know that I had an encounter with one that kicked us out of the farm, didn't want us to speak to their workers, blatantly kicked us out and said, we don't want you speaking to our workers anymore. So we don't have any positive feedback from any of the farmers.
Is that legal for them to kick you out?
It's their property, so yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Got it. So can you tell us about, you talked about the importance of the legislation in 2019. What legislative efforts or other efforts on behalf of local, state, federal governments might you like to see in the coming years?
Speedy process. I don't know if you realize that when I stated the dates of when we filed and when we were certified, it took an astronomical time in between to be certified. Excuse me. It took us some time to be certified, and it's not supposed to work that way. This process is supposed to be quick once we have majority of the card signers. So if there is 10, we need 6 to 7 workers that are in support of the union. And once we provide that to Public Relations Board, we're supposed to be certified immediately. It doesn't happen that way. We have hearings after hearings, and it's taken a long time. So we have successfully lobbied for PERB to receive $2 million for modernization efforts, allowing electronic filing, which is still not there, communication between PERB and the parties of for certification. So recently, PERB was approved for staff dedicated to farm workers' collective bargainings and unfair labor practices. So we still have a lot to work on because it's still taking some time. I mean, we filed in April for Palmer Palmanont, and we were just certified in August. So we have a lot of work to do, but we're getting there. We're keeping up the fight. We're fighting for these certifications to happen in a speedier process. We don't want workers to be punished because they are unionizing, but at the same time, they have the protection. And as long as they're not unionizing during working hours, they're protected by law. So that's a great part about the law, is just the time in between.
Can be used for the efforts, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about other labor rights movements happening within the state and within the country? I know that you're part of larger organizations that
Yes.
are involved in organizing other workers, not just farm workers. A lot of attention has been put on Amazon and the workers who have organized on Staten Island. Can you share how the work you're doing relates to other work in the state and in the country?
Well, it's the first time in history that workers have been uniting, and I think the pandemic actually opened up a lot of workers' eyes. Just from the fact that COVID occurred, a lot of them didn't have the protection at the workplace, and it's allowed us to speak to workers about their rights, and it's opening their eyes that we're working these amount of hours. I mean, we all know what Amazon, I hope that everyone has been paying attention to what's going on in Amazon, but a lot of them have to use a bathroom and use bottles and long hours, and they're not giving long breaks, and they work in these big warehouses and not given these protections to get back to work on time. So they're being ostracized for taking a little longer of a break. Meanwhile, it takes from the other side of Manhattan just to get to their workplace during a break. So it's been amazing to have workers stand up in Amazon, Staten Island, Bessemer, Alabama. We've also have Starbucks workers, uniting. Yeah, it's a big group of Starbucks workers. Just recently, Trader Joe's. So it's amazing to see these young workers standing up and fighting for what they deserve at their workplace, and that's a voice, most importantly. But it's happening, and it's amazing that is going on. And the RWDSU has been part of the Bessemer in Alabama. We support Staten Island and any other efforts to unionize throughout the country.
Why has it taken so long? It sounds like part of the reason that it's happening now is because of COVID and all the societal changes and the fear of getting infected in the workplace. But why hadn't these movements happened earlier?
Fear and lack of education. That's basically it. They're afraid of their bosses, and they're not educated properly. They don't know the benefits of being a union member. It's the middle class that is mainly part of unionizing, and we're the ones that built this country. So they're starting to learn that. It's just little by little. I guess it takes a traumatic experience for people to open their eyes and see that I deserve better. I deserve a voice in my workplace. So it's been a long time coming, but it's here.
So I encourage those of you who have questions for Yamira to submit them. If you're here in person, Excel Baguma is in the back, and she can collect questions that you may have. We also have question cards on the center table. We have about 30 people watching us online right now, and if you're watching us online, you can submit questions using the live chat function on YouTube, the comments function on Facebook. You can also email me, pthompson@stbarts.org. That's PTHOMPSON@stbarts.org. While we're waiting for those questions, I'm wondering how you yourself got into this work. Can you talk about your commitment to labor and what made you decide to become a labor organizer?
Organizing chose me. I didn't choose it.
It's a calling, like the priesthood.
It is. It really is. And it's so satisfying. I never thought I would be able to be a voice for others, but looking back at who I am, I'm boisterous. I fight for my own, so I felt like there's a need for me to actually fight for others that don't have a voice in their workplace. And the workers empower me. Every time there's a campaign and I'm actually, working in the weeds of what's going on in their own personal workplace, they empower me to continue to do what I do. So I do this from the heart. I love what I do. I love the workers that I've worked with in the past. It's sad to see certain situations. So when we win a union election, and even more gratifying when we have the ability to negotiate a decent contract for these folks and see the expression that they show once, the gratitude. I've been hugged, I've been thanked, workers try to offer, and I'm like, no, this is from the heart. This is a gratifying thing. It's not a job. It's a calling. It's really a calling.
This weekend is Labor Day weekend.
Yes.
It's become really the unofficial end to summer, and
Yes.
that's how most people think about it. They don't think about honoring and contributing to the labor movement. How do you recommend those of us who are so far removed from these conversations, what's the best way of observing tomorrow as Labor Day? What can we do? Should we do?
Well, let's remember, it's been 2 years, and throughout this pandemic, we've seen a lot of folks come out and be recognized. Nurses, grocery workers, they were the front line of this entire pandemic. They were the ones that were putting their lives at risk, going to work, wearing masks, and thankfully, labor unions like Local 338 and many others were helping these workers feel that protection. We never sat back and watched it from afar. We were in the front and center of this pandemic, going out to supermarkets, protecting our members, giving them masks, giving them hand sanitizers. We also had member assistance programs to help those that were going through any type of mental issues throughout this pandemic. And we have to remember that on Labor Day, first of all, it's the first time in 2 years that we're able to march down Fifth Avenue and celebrate labor. And these are the folks that deserve it, the nurses, grocery workers, and even the remote workers that were home. It's not easy working from home, especially when you have kids. I mean, I could imagine, I'm a mother, my daughter's older, but I could imagine being a parent, a single mother, a single father, staying home, taking care of your kids, and working. It definitely wasn't easy. So this Labor Day is in honor of those essential workers that put their life on the line and spent their every day going to work and helping us feed our own families.
Yeah, these farm workers you've been working with, they worked the whole pandemic, right? There was no stay at home for them.
There was absolutely no such thing for them. And they even worked while having COVID. It was very sad to see that a lot of them were even scared to call out. They went to work, they were sick, it was horrible. We actually helped them get assistance and get vaccinated so that they're protected at the workplace. So it was sad to see that a lot of them were scared to actually call out sick and work in the farms during these conditions, but they fed our families. They deserve that respect, and it's great to see that they're appreciative of it now. They see that from the efforts that we did, now they feel that protection, and they know that they have people standing by them. You spoke about something in regards to state laws and so forth. There's also another spectrum of this, and this is the overtime. We all think that these farm workers go into work at 6 o'clock and come out at 3 o'clock, and they don't. Harvest season for these workers is from anywhere from April all the way to October. These farm workers work from 5 a.m. to about 6 to 7 p.m.
Wow.
No overtime pay. And it's a difference between our industries, grocery workers. If you work past 40 hours in a work week, you get overtime pay. They don't get that after 60 hours. So we're working with state and local politicians to change this law. It's imperative for these workers to be able to receive the same benefits as us, overtime pay after 40 hours. So September 7th, we have a huge presser with the Department of Labor. There was January 28th of 2022. We had a lot of farm workers speak up to the DOL and speak about the fact that they don't get overtime after 40 hours. And so they've been working on this threshold, but it's taken more of 20 years to reach a threshold of 40 overtime pay after 40 hours. And it's a fight that we have to take up with the lower overtime threshold so that the farm workers receive overtime after 40 hours, which means if it's passed as of 2024, the overtime threshold will be phased into over a 10-year period, dropping 2 hours annually up until 2023, which means that as of 2023, these farm workers will receive overtime after 40 hours. So that's another fight that we have to take up with the Department of DOL and our governor, because these workers also, throughout the pandemic, were working from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., and it's tough to see these things. So this is a huge fight that we all have to be aware of.
And this goes back to farm workers just being treated differently from every other kind of labor class. They did not get that
Yeah.
overtime protection.
Yeah.
We have several questions that have come in. One of them has to do, we're speaking now about legislative process. How have elected officials, how do you work with elected officials? How have they been involved or not in this effort?
They've been very much involved. It's just a fight that we have to take with the Department of Labor. And, we have a lot of politicians involved. Jessica Ramos has been involved with many of our efforts, but our leadership has political departments where they reach out and they lobby for these folks to actually change these laws, because it's important to put it out there that these workers are straining themselves. So it's a fight with local, it's a fight with state officials. We're getting some pushback, but we are getting support from them as well.
Another question has to do with the documentation status of these workers. You talked about the fear of that you as labor organizers might be mistaken as immigration authorities. What's the kind of documented versus undocumented percentage out on these farms, and how does that affect their ability to be compensated fairly, join a union, be protected, et cetera?
Well, under the PERB Act, they are protected to form a union. It's just the fact that they don't have a Social Security. So we've helped them get assistance in collecting tax IDs, it serves somewhat like a Social Security. They're able to work under that tax ID, but it's a bit of a difference. And yeah, like you said, there's fear that, we're not, they don't know who we are. So once they find out who we are, we've been able to provide them with assistance to get documentation. So it's really a process. It's expensive. They have to pay for a tax ID, but we do help them get their tax IDs and so forth.
Are workers ever fired for pushing back on the conditions of their workplace, and what kind of protections exist for those workers? How can you or others help them?
Well, I haven't, to this day, I haven't seen anyone or heard of anyone get fired for pushback. They're really not that type. They love to work. They're dedicated people. They're hard workers. So there's not really much of a pushback on their behalf. They're willing to do everything, anything to get the work done.
When these big corporations are threatened with unionization, they often say that unions aren't in the best interest of their workers. Why would they make that claim, and why are unions in the best interest of workers?
Well, employers do it because they fear the workers of having a voice at the workplace and giving them that respect. But once we educate workers as to what their rights are, what is indicated in the Fair Labor Practice Act, it's our job to educate them and show them that they have the backing of not only us as union officials, but 1.3 million members throughout the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. So when they hear that, it empowers them. It really does. So they have many protections.
Employers, are they only worried about loss of profit, or do they have other motivations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're afraid of losing profits. They're afraid of not being able to feed their families. And it's funny that they say that, because they're like, a lot of, like, Pinzar is #1 wine in Long Island. And for them to say that they're fear of losing business and not being able to feed their families, they haven't put themselves in the shoes of these hardworking men and women that are out on the field, that left their families, and this is how they feed their family. And they do their job with, no thought process. They love what they do, and they're not asking for everything. They're just asking for a piece of the pie. And a lot of them have stated, we're not going to be able to feed our family because, labor costs are going to go up and we're going to have to relocate. We've heard stories like that during the hearings with the Department of Labor, where they're afraid that, they're going to have to close their farm down and move to a different state because of the unionization efforts.
We have just a few minutes left, but we do have a few minutes to take more questions. So I encourage you, those of you who are here in person or joining us online, to get those final questions in. We're sitting here in a church now. I know that Rural Migrant Ministries has done some of the organizing work, collaborating with you all. I'm wondering what you can say about people of faith and their role in collaborating with unions and supporting the rights of workers. What is our particular role as those of us who call ourselves Christians or say that we have faith? How can we fit in?
People of faith have been more than help. Just bringing that piece of faith into what we do is an integral part. They've been the forefront of this fight as well, fighting with state, fighting with local officials for workers to have protection. So they've been a very important part of our partnership in organizing these workers, protecting them, giving them groceries, helping them educate themselves with what their rights are. So faith has, brought our Rural Migrant Ministry has been a very important part to our campaign, and the folks there have been awesome, part of the community, bringing them together. Not only workshops like English and Spanish classes and education, but they've also done other types of workshops just to empower them. They have summer camps, after-school programs where the farm workers could drop their children off and trust in someone of faith to take care of their kids and make sure that they're taken care of while they're out on the fields. So they've been a very important and beautiful part of our partnership.
Someone has submitted a question about, and I don't know too much about this, non-farm payroll is a statistic that's often reported. And if you can talk about, why is that a statistic people look to, and what does it mean that we're intentionally omitting farm workers when we look to statistics about how well the economy is doing?
It's a statistic. Workers are included in this. I just think that farmers are including them in their payroll, but it's because of the documentation issue. You asked me before how many are documented and how many are not. So there might be like a 10% of them that are documented, and those are the ones that are being reported on payroll, and then the other folks are not. It helps them and in certain ways, but then they're also breaking the laws because they're not reporting what funds they're making from having all these workers and not having to report them on their payroll.
So folks are getting paid under the table in these contexts. Which doesn't give them the same protection.
Basically.
Yeah. What kind of this work is difficult for you? What kind of fuels and sustains you as you do this work? What helps you through the more challenging periods?
The workers empower me. I mean, speaking to them and hearing their stories day in and day out empower me to fight harder for them, to fight harder. It's a fight that keeps on going, but they're the fuel.
A lot of people will have a day off of work tomorrow as we recognize labor. Is there an article or a book or a podcast or something that you think we should read or follow that will help us understand the issues better?
Well, if you're interested in learning more about this, we do have a Facebook page. It's Trabajadores Agrícolas Unidos, so TA Unidos, TAUNIDOS.org. We're also on Facebook. You could follow us on Facebook and read all about the movement and everything that we've done in the last 2 years with farm workers. So I strongly suggest that.
All right, and we'll put that in the chat so that folks can go to the website and read more about it. And TAUNIDOS.org.
Yes.
Any final parting words for us today?
Well, first and foremost, thank you all for listening in and joining this conversation. It's important to us to spread the word. Join us on Labor Day next Saturday. We'll be marching down and supporting and finally being able to celebrate labor, which is very important to us, very important to those hardworking and men and women that have been out there just sacrificing their days and their families to make ends meet. So I really appreciate this opportunity to come out and speak about farm workers, labor, and I really appreciate you sitting here with me and inviting me over to your church. It's beautiful here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Myra, thank you so much for all the work that you do, and thank you for taking the additional time to be with us.
My pleasure.
This Labor Day Sunday morning.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I hope you'll stick around and join us for worship in a few minutes at 11 a.m. in the church, whether you're joining us online or here in person. It's available via live stream as well. I also hope you'll join us next week for the forum. We'll be welcoming Dr. James Cohn. He is the medical director for the World Trade Center Health Registry, a part of the New York City Health Department. And as we remember 9/11, on the 21st anniversary of 9/11, we'll be talking about the health effects of that disaster and what we've learned now 21 years later. So please do join us then, and join us for worship in just a few minutes. Thanks all for being here.